Hey, thanks for checking out the video. If you all like it, please like and subscribe, and hope you all enjoy it. Have a great rest of the day.
I do an interpretation of a devout Scotch-Irish Presbyterian minister who lived here in the Waxhaw region at that time. I actually do two different impressions. One is of a historical figure whose name was Reverend William Martin, who had a congregation near what is today, present-day, Great Falls, South Carolina, which technically was part of the Waxhaws, believe it or not, at the very southern tip of the Waxhaw region. And he was also the supply pastor for the Waxhaw Presbyterian Church, which everyone knows is just a little bit further south of here in Lancaster County, South Carolina. I also do another impersonation of a gentleman whose name was Reverend John Simpson, who had a meeting house in Chester County as well. And they had different unique experiences during the war, but they were indicative of the type of experiences that the Scotch-Irish Presbyterians had. If you were Scotch-Irish, typically you were Presbyterian, all right, or the Church of Scotland. And when the Presbyterians settled in this part of Mecklenburg County, which we are in now, Mecklenburg County, back in the 18th century, you were a member of the Presbyterian Church. And the ministers that served their congregations were the leaders of their communities. They were the most well-educated men, and they were the ones that had the greatest influence over some of the actions of their congregations. Now, during the American Revolution, the Scotch-Irish, or men from Ulster, as they prefer to be referred to, had no regard, had no love for the British. They had no regard for the Anglican Church. They simply wanted to settle in the back country in order to be left alone from the control of English authorities and control of the Anglican Church. They wanted to worship as they worship and not have to be subservient to the dictates of the Anglican Church. So, without further ado, I'm going to give you a generic version of a sermon that could have been performed at the very end of the year of 1780, which was a very dramatic year in South Carolina and North Carolina during the American Revolution. During that time, the American War for Independence, or the Revolutionary War, had shifted from the northern colonies, where most of the fighting was taking place in New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, which become a stalemate in that part of the world, and the war shifted to the south. It was called the Southern Strategy. The British thought that they could come south, take Georgia, and once Georgia fell, then it was simply a matter of capturing Charlestown and sweeping up into the back country of South Carolina and North Carolina. The objective of this was to simply recruit loyalists from South Carolina that would join the ranks of the British Army, invade North Carolina, invade Virginia, cut off Washington's food supply. That, in essence, was the Southern Strategy. Now, in hindsight, we can look back and say it didn't work for obvious reasons. That's why we are American citizens today, right? But back in 1780, it was a big question mark, especially after Charlestown, which was the New York City of the South, had fallen into the hands of the British. Between May of 1780 and January of 1781, it was quite questionable about what was going to happen in South Carolina, in North Carolina, in terms of control. And South Carolina, in essence, was one big battleground during 1780. Starting off, there was one horrific battle that took place May 29, 1780, that was known as the Battle of the Waxhaws. It was a very bloody and brutal conflict that took place, in which a detached unit of the British Army, known as the British Legion, under Colonel Bannister Tarleton, had confronted an American Continental Army under the command of Colonel Abraham Buford. They faced off in an area that is located just 9 miles east of present-day Lancaster, South Carolina. Today, that is where Buford Battleground Park is located, and if you haven't been there, I encourage you to go there. Because that really sparked off a sense of the Scotch-Irish community galvanizing their support here in what is today present-day Union County, but also Chester County, South Carolina, Lancaster, South Carolina, and York County, South Carolina, as they are known today. All right? So, I give you a sermon that would have hypothetically been delivered at the end of the year 1780. My hearers, as we are gathered here at this appointed time, I can say without hesitation and with a joyful heart that there is a reason for celebration and commemoration of our victories that we have experienced this past year. This latest victory is yet another sign that marks the hopeful beginning of a new season in our long and bitter struggle for independence. It is of great importance that we celebrate. Celebration and rejoicing is a salve that lessens the sting of our hurtful past. Indeed, our season of suffering has been very long. My hearers, I am a woven piece of Irish linen that is cut from the same bolt as you. I am a humble and devout Presbyterian, and the son of a proud man of Ulster. I am a man of the cloth, and I am also a patriot. My parents came from Ulster to the distant land of America to experience a new season of life, free from the overreach of the Church of England and the clutches of distant British landlords and the English King and Parliament. We share a common experience and past. And despite our best efforts, our long season of struggle and strife has continued in the New World as it did in the Old. Has not this past year been another sad chapter in this long history? The sword of war has been swift and has raged in the back country. The British and Tories, evil and misguided men, have looked upon the back country as a conquered people. A conquered people. With pride and hubris, they regard themselves as entitled to the spoils of war and all the glory of that achievement. There is no glory in their evil deeds. These men have murdered us, reducing our numbers. They have reduced our homes and loom houses to glowing embers. They have confiscated our property and livestock. What they could not use was burned, bayoneted, or shot, and left to putrefy on the ground. Not so much of an orphan's share of food has been left to eat. Not much of a farthing's worth has been left Those of us who have survived this destruction only have the clothes on our back. This same ilk has consigned the meeting houses at Fishing Creek and Rocky Creek to flames, condemning them as sedition houses, not as sacred spaces of worship. My hearers, as I speak to you at this moment, Reverend Martin of Rocky Creek is awaiting sentence from Lord Cornwallis in Winnsboro, following a 6-month detainment in the Camden jail. This has been the common fate of many Presbyterian patriots. But, my hearers, we must celebrate the victories that we have had this past year. It is important for us to celebrate, for it is written in Ecclesiastes chapter 3 that for everything there is a season, and our season has begun. Have faith, my hearers, in the Almighty God. He has shown that He is on our side. Have faith. Remember the victories that we have had this past year. Victories at Mobley's Meeting House, Alexander's Old Fields, Gowan's Fort, Williamson's Plantation, King's Mountain. Those were victories in which the hand of Almighty God shown that the pride and hubris of these arrogant men, the British Army and their Tory allies, would not be tolerated. The atrocities committed, the lives lost in this endeavor, including the life of William Strong, a boy of 17 who committed no crime other than reading his Bible on the Sabbath, that their lives would be avenged. Let us not forget those who have suffered and died this year. Let us not forget the sounds and shrieks of dying men crying out for mercy and quarter while being slain and slaughtered on the battlefields at Waxhaw and at Camden. And let us not forget that we are endeavoring and we are striving towards a peace, a season of peace that will come through the power of the Almighty God. Have faith and patience in our Almighty God. By God's design, the seasons of change approach at a slow and gradual pace in the natural world. It will be by God's design and time that our long season of suffering and bondage will change. We will be granted a new purpose under heaven. We have great reason to thank Thee, Almighty God, for the many favors that we have received from Thy hands, the many battles we have won. Let us remember not to fall into the temptation of pride and hubris, and to always be humbled by your great and awesome power. And now, my hearers, go ye and rest Meditate upon the words that you have heard on this day. And remember to hearken back to the time of Gideon and the miracle that was performed there in his time. In Gideon's time, they defeated the enemy with trumpets and lamps. Today, my hearers, we face a mighty foe. We have each other. We have our faith in God. Just as it was in Gideon's time, we will vanquish this evil foe. Just as it was in Gideon's time. The sword of the Lord is in the sky to guide us and protect us on the morrow. Peace be with you.